Hello and welcome to Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. I'm your host, Ed Charbeneau, and with me is my co-host, John Bristowe. How are you doing, John?
Good. How's everyone doing? Just getting my morning coffee on, so apologies for that.
Morning, because you're on Wednesday morning. I'm still on Thursday. You're in the future.
Yes, the future is very good. I thought
Are there any
Max Headroom did that? Didn't they say that when Max Headroom first came out, they were like 10 minutes into the future? It wasn't like 25 years. It was like 10 minutes.
Is there a better tech news Wednesday than there was Thursday? Just curious.
Yeah.
It's about the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time travel jokes aside, we've got, this is the news and tech show. So we should probably share some articles and stuff and give our very highly educated opinions on these things. That's how this works, right?
Right.
So this one came under travel, but it's very tech related. So I figured I'd kick things off with a little. We'll start with a little more broader scope of technology discussion here. This one, I know this has been floated before, but it was in the news again. This was just published yesterday. The windowless cabin, the future of air travel.
Mm-hmm.
So they're basically talking about using projections or screens to recreate like a virtual window on an aircraft.
Yeah.
And there's some ideas around that this might reduce the amount of like manufacturing and make it more aerodynamic. Therefore, it uses less fuel. Maybe the windows, will take, virtual windows will take some weight off the aircraft, so it might be more fuel efficient. But I kind of wanted to chat with you, John, about what you thought about maybe the unforeseen costs here. Is this something you want to see in an airplane?
I think this is an incredibly stupid idea, this whole concept. First and foremost, people don't like to fly. Now you're going to put them in a coffin. So for the folks who basically well, I'm serious. What happens when you first get on the plane? It's pitch black, right? I mean, I don't know but like windows are there to let in natural light. Natural light is not a bad thing. I mean, how much do these guys have to try and sell you on the idea that this is a good thing for passengers? It's not true. I was going to use an expletive, but I choose not to. I don't want to see a virtual representation of what's out there. I want to see what's out there. Give me a window. Your fuel efficiency can come in other ways. Now, the reality is that air travel, you know, air travel is hard to make efficient. It is a very difficult um, prospect of having efficient air travel because you're fighting so many forces of resistance when it
Hmm.
comes to traveling through the air. Um, I don't know why we haven't tried and solved this problem with other means, but whatever. But I think that projecting TVs onto walls, I mean, the energy demands alone, I don't know. I mean, like a lot of these TVs are quite energy efficient, but you think about like, okay, first of all, there's the amount of power that's required. Okay, so you're going to increase the power requirements of the airplane. All right, whatever.
Hmm.
But if you take a look at the pictures here, this is classic designers sort of this is a false sale of goods, which is basically what you're pitching here is you can have your own private plane because that's what it looks like. What is the
Yeah.
reality? Like, who is going to? That is beyond first class. That this setup here. This is
Yeah.
like this reality does not exist because you take a look at we're running a business here, right? If this is American Airlines or if this is like United or whatever, they're like, how in the hell are we going to afford putting all these, and I don't know if you've traveled like you collectively, like royal you, not you, Ed, but if you have traveled recently, like within the last decade, you'll know that air travel is not the most pleasant experience. Companies are trying to cram you as tightly like sardines as possible. You've got
Hmm.
airlines in the UK which are proposing stand-up seats. Like they're literally not selling you the entire
Oh
seat.
my
They're
God.
getting you
Yeah,
to
I've seen
stand
that.
up. So now you're going the other way, which is basically let's sell you this, I don't know what, Gattaca version of air travel, like
Yeah.
give me a break. This is such a stupid idea.
Yeah. So we share the same opinion on this one. I think this is an interesting concept, but nothing more than that. So there's a huge difference between an actual window and a TV picture. I think
It,
this is something that you can't get through even the context through even like looking at a photo of this on the internet. But if you go into a plane and the windows were replaced by TVs, like you lose that sense of depth when you
uh-huh.
look out the window. No matter
Yep.
how good that TV is, it is flat, and your brain's gonna figure that out really quick. And I guarantee you, this is gonna lead to like a lot of uncomfortable air sickness if they
And
try to do
also
something
people are
like
going to
this.
freak out on planes. They're like, I need to see something. The reason why Windows exists is to calm people, not to freak them out, right? There's like
Hmm.
an escape hatch of sorts that I can potentially break through if I want to. But now you put me, and not only that, I don't know if you like the landing procedure. They turn off the TVs anyway, so now you're in this dark black cabin, which I assume they're going to just run ads the whole time, or you have to upgrade your window to see the outside. Yes, please swipe your credit card if you actually want to see the outside, as opposed to all these ads. I can totally see this going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, yeah. I think you might have found a snake in the grass there. I didn't even think about the ad aspect of this, but yeah, I could see advertisers trying to take the space over.
Sure.
Like this panoramic view of the outside is brought to you by
Yes, I know. Just
peanut
give
M
me
and
just
M's.
I know, just what's wrong with a window? Yes, I know, efficiency, yada yada yada, but that's for you. That's not for me. I don't care how efficient your plane is. I want a better experience. You got problems with efficiency? Fine. You work it out with your engineers, but don't replace my window with your ad laden TV.
Not to
Wow, I am
mention,
off to a bitter start today. This is awesome.
can you imagine when one of these things goes wrong and it's like
Sure. Like blue
it's
screens and everything. Yeah.
flickering,
Yeah,
it's
exactly. My window's not working. Great.
it's
Great.
glitching like crazy.
I know.
Maybe
Think
see
of think
there's a
like
gremlin on my display.
I know, like it's a sort of that's a Twilight Zone reference.
That dated me really bad right there.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Like think about there's just I won't belabor the point anymore, but I'll just say think about the type of people that sit in economy class. I was one of those all those animals that sit in the back, right? And I was one of them for like 20 years. The last thing I want to do is now be told you don't have a window to look out of. I mean, there's a reason why the window seat is popular because you see out of a window. So, anyway,
Yeah, these things in G-forces. I imagine there could be some security implications of this too, if you could not see inside of the plane from the
Sure,
outside.
sure.
So, we've had hostile takeovers of planes before. Could you imagine that thing being on the tarmac, held over by
Yeah.
some, not nice people, and you can't see what's going on inside? Not
These
good.
these these things are for people who have too much time in Photoshop.
Too much time
That's
in
what this
Photoshop.
this is
I,
what this is.
I think I'll segue on that. That's probably a good way to end that one. Uh, we'll pivot immediately to what we're doing now. I don't know if that was a great segue or not. Probably not. But I came across this on ZDNet. We see these from time to time, and I think it's important to kind of point these articles out every now and then. What is it to be a developer in developer relations? This one was kind of a nice little shout out to what we do, John. And it's kind of talking about the importance of DevRel, what we do, but it also highlights the fact that we're kind of in a boom again. So we go through these cycles in the software industry where, DevRel and influencers and things kind of, wane for a little bit. And then there's like a big hiring extravaganza, right? Like Microsoft built out their cloud developer advocate roles couple years back. I mean, they like scooped up all the good talent from all over the industry for a little while. And this article's talking about how that's kind of happening again.
Mhm.
And you see a lot of even smaller companies and big ones hiring. There's kind of like a huge market for this role recently.
Sure,
And
sure.
people are starting to finally quantify what it is that we do. We both worked for Progress, a company that's, been doing this for a long time. And there's kind of the industry as a whole now seeing that what we've been doing for the last 20 years here is paying off, and they're getting in on it. So I thought it was a pretty cool little read. It kind of opens some people's eyes as to what's going on if you're not in this position.
Yeah. I know that some developers see it as a sneaky thing, right? You're trying to sell to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that sentiment. What I would say is that software is notoriously difficult to try and convey its intent and its benefits in a way that makes it easy for developers to understand. And so, what
Yeah.
developer relations tries to do is bridge that gap that exists, because developers will build software solutions, but they won't necessarily be able to articulate its purpose effectively or efficiently. And so DevRel tries to fill that gap in some respects. From an internal perspective, DevRel is seen as, an extension of the sales cycle, as highlighted by this paragraph. But basically, they are there to. They're kind of like the good cop and the good cop bad cop duality of, basically technical sales and marketing. They are able to speak to the level like, listen, man, I understand. You're just a developer. You want to know how it works and all that, man. I understand. And then the bad cops, like the salesperson, like, how many licenses do you want? Sort of thing. Like, so there is an element of that I appreciate and understand. But I think the intent for most folks I know in DevRel is to help people and try and convey what it is their software does to developers and speak at that level.
Yeah. There was some really good points in here that agree with all of that. So I thought it was a worthy highlight here to share.
Yep.
We got lots of repeat customers here in chat. Thanks for joining us, by the way, on a Tuesday. We normally did this on a Monday, but we had some scheduling conflicts, so we're going to keep doing this on Tuesday from now on. But welcome, Curious Drive and Fuel Snabble and folks that are joining us in chat to hear us old men rant about software development. This is another one I frequently talk about this on the show. I try to bring up AI and AR and
Sure.
those type of things because in my opinion, these are the future of what we do. And even if you're not developing AI, you are going to be interacting with the APIs that touch it, and so on and so forth. So this kind of article is in agreement with the way I've felt for the last 5 years or more.
Mhm.
And it's a really good overview of some of the things that I've said and some new ideas in here about how AI is transforming software development. So we can just kind of scan through some of the titles here. They kind of summarize, but we're seeing it in our tools more. So you
Mhm.
got things that we've talked about on the show, like code. What is the GitHub thing again? We just talked about Copilot. Is that right,
Yes.
John? Yeah,
Yes.
Copilot and those type of things. Those are all coming into the fold. They talk about DevOps, how machine learning is
Mhm.
changing DevOps. I mean, this is a
Mhm.
really good read here because I don't do a whole lot of DevOps, so this kind of gave me a bit more insight into what's happening in
Yes.
spaces I don't touch. So they talk about security, and
Yes.
you see this in GitHub as well, where it like scans your projects and alerts you to dependencies that are out of date or have security
Yes.
breaches.
Dependabot.
Dependabot, yeah.
This isn't
Um,
AI though. None of this is AI. Not in the purest academic sense. AI, but that's the thing about AI is that it's not going to be like a gradual increase. It's going to be a sharp spike upwards when AI becomes a thing, and it's going to blow through the top of the graph basically. Um,
mhm.
and so I would say that people misname what is really machine learning and still programming that people are doing as part of this.
Yeah,
Um,
so Dependabot may not be a great example. That was just
no,
my
no,
example of it, but
yes,
they talk more about heuristics and things in here that you can
yes,
use to detect like penetration and things like that as security. I was just kind of giving some other
yeah,
ideas, I guess, that are
yeah. So
similar.
GPT-3 is an interesting algorithm which is generating. So where you're seeing AI right now, at least where I'm seeing it, is in the generation of news stories. So you're seeing a lot of articles that are actually now written by machines, and they're utilizing AI in a sense. It's more machine learning than anything, but they're utilizing it in that regard to generate news articles. And who knows if, we'll have code generation that does similar things. Like you have a set of criteria, which is inputs and outputs. Um, inputs would be like these are my finite sets of inputs and outputs, and if as long as the inputs and outputs match, who cares what happens in between? So
Hmm.
maybe AI might do that, but those are generational algorithms that are just running over and over and over again and just basically tracking scores. So they're not really AI in a sense. So I think we need to be really, really careful about how we use the term AI because it's not accurate used in this context. This is machine learning and generational algorithms, et cetera, et cetera. So um, let's make sure. I think it's on us, the software development industry, to tell folks such as this person, hey, this isn't technically AI. When it's AI, you'll know. Everyone will know. When AI happens, it will be world changing. In fact, it will probably happen, and it will be on CNN and Fox News and all these news places for days and weeks, and people will talk about this like a
So
major event.
I think you're
So
getting two terms conflicted, though. So AI is a generalized term that includes
yes,
things like machine learning and computer
not to me,
vision,
not to
speech
me,
to text.
not to me.
What you're talking about is called artificial general intelligence, or
Yes,
AGI. That is something that is completely different. So that
yes, I
is the
know.
ability for a machine to solve literally any problem you throw at it the way humans do. So in this article, they're talking about AI is the um,
That subset, I understand.
the term that the field uses to describe different algorithms.
Yes, and I have a
So
problem with that because I don't really think it's intelligent. I think it's just a lot of if then else statements. So,
yeah, it's more statistics than anything.
yes,
This is something that's been done for generations before computers even existed. Just
yes,
it's a lot harder to do without machines. It kind of mimics learning, I think, is the way this
That's a
kind of came
good, that is
about.
a good, that is a good way to describe it. It mimics learning. It's not true
Yeah.
learning, but it is learning of a sense. Yes.
Yeah. So the algorithms have the perception of learning, even though it's just statistics that gradually improve over
Yes.
time.
To the computer, it's just adding bits.
Yeah.
It's doing
So
what it always does. So
your algorithms are basically finding the function of n. But anyway, without the deep dive here, it does a good job at kind of overviewing like some of the higher level things, and then they
yes.
jump into more of the lower level things like running algorithms that can do cost estimates. You know, I dabble with this one in my Blazeport application. Like I'm pretending to estimate prices for trips into outer space when actually it's just running against taxi data, and like I can kind of estimate what a taxi would cost in Manhattan,
Yes.
and I kind of fudge the numbers a little bit. Code refactoring, we see that in Visual Studio, and with the what is that feature in the new Visual Studio 2022? There's some IntelliCode, yeah. It gives you some of these highlights and stuff. Assistants, we all know what that is these days. So you can really easily write skills for Alexa these days, which I'm queuing mine up in the background probably just by saying that. Waiting for it to respond. There's a lot of good stuff. I mean, it's a very broad article, but it's introducing people that may not be in the field to some of these things.
The thing that this article doesn't touch on is, will the body reject the organ? What I mean by that is, will software developers incorporate this tooling into their workflows? That is an interesting question, because I don't know if that will happen. There's oftentimes especially amongst software developers, don't move my cheese. What are these tools doing? I don't have enough visibility into what this thing is doing. And I think that some of these tools will not be successful simply because of the fact that they're not trusted. So there's an element to this, which is the human element. Software is still created by humans, and it will be that way for a very long time. So, you know, what is the potential of this actually being incorporated is an interesting question.
So the AI that they're talking about in this article, though, I think is pertinent for every developer to know about.
And, absolutely. Yes.
You know, if you're not including these things in probably about, I'd say a good chunk of products, I want to throw a percentage out there, you know, about 50% of all percentages are made up anyway, but I'd say about 80% of your software, if you don't have something AI related in it, if it's competitive, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. So
you're missing out. Correct.
Hey, look, I pulled that out of thin air, and there you
go.
I guessed it right on the nose.
Perfect.
But no, I mean, like if you're developing a fitness app, your competitor is going to have, you know, some machine learning in there to help predict, like, you know, health habits for your customers and stuff like that. If you're not looking at those things now, you've already lost that race.
Yes. Ultimately, these tools are there for a competitive advantage. Correct.
So this is an odd pivot. JS Paint.
Speaking of AI, let's go the other way. This is like an anti-truth. This is anti-AI. I just stumbled across this. I thought it was hilarious. JS Paint. It's basically Paint in JavaScript. It's a repo. There's also JSPaint.exe, which is a hostable application of JS Paint on Windows, Mac, and Linux.
Oh boy!
Using a host process. I just thought this was hilarious, so just chuck that up there.
You gave me a new reason to hate JavaScript. No, I don't hate JavaScript. I'm kidding. I do hate Paint though. Just because it's terrible. The most
Ed, you're terrible.
The most featureless Paint program ever developed.
Sure.
It's really cool they did it in JavaScript though. I think that is really neat. Just for nostalgia reasons, I think it's pretty cool.
We were building these things back in the day, right? Like in the 90s, people were building Paint programs that, you know, this obviously comes from the 90s, right? So it's not like this stuff's hard. You just doing mouse click events and drawing lines and things like that. So
very cool. Yeah. I like it. Speaking of security, we mentioned that earlier. What is security.txt file doing for us, John?
Right. So when there's a lot of different ways a company can be proactive about targeting its security policies. So most oftentimes, if you're a reasonable organization, that's a loaded term, but if you're an organization who thinks proactively about security, you'll employ processes that encourage people to find bugs, exploits. There's things like bug bounties and things of that nature. This is another possible means of letting folks know, hey, if you find some issues with, our software, you can publish a security.txt file on your website that will give people links to where to go.
Hmm.
An often cited problem is when people find exploits, they don't know where to go. They can't talk to people. They have to go on LinkedIn and find the CTO email, and it often goes unaddressed. This is a sad state of affairs with our software today. There are some caveats with that. With this, however, a security.txt file is not the best way of doing this. There's really no unified agreement on what is the best way, but it is a way. Security.txt does invite you to get a lot of spam from people who claim to be bug bounty, people, and
Yeah.
they'll give you often you get a lot of spam basically from this, but I mean, it is one of many ways in which you can try and tackle this problem. So, just an interesting article that highlights the pros and cons and goes through some of the things that people are doing. Interestingly enough, a lot of people are actually starting to incorporate. I mean, when I say people, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations are starting to incorporate this as part of their policies. So, yeah.
Yeah. I like the bug bounty idea. It's been used pretty effectively.
Yes, I agree. Pay people for finding exploits. I think it's a reasonable, it's a minimalist reasonable outcome for people doing what they're good at, which is breaking software. And I think
Hmm.
you should pay people for doing such things.
Yeah,
And if you don't
absolutely.
if you don't have a bug bounty, you should probably think about starting one.
Yeah, agreed. Mozilla Observatory. What is
Speaking of
this?
security, yes, this is also related to security. So this is a site where you can punch in a URL. And what this will do is use tools and also third-party tools to scan your website and give you an overall score of the security of that website. So it ranges from things like, are you using SSL, are you using cookies, are you using this, are you using that, do you protect against this, that, the other. And so the observatory is basically a place where you can go to do scanning of your sites. And I thought this was kind of neat. So I included it here as a security related thing. There is an
Must,
API, there's a GitHub repo. I don't know, maybe it's stuck. So
I was gonna say it must take a while. My site's not very big and it's static, so I was wondering.
yeah, I don't know why this is not working. It worked for me. So
Worked on my
yeah,
machine. I see how that is.
exactly. Awaiting scanner instance.
Is my
I don't
website
know.
online? Is my website even working? Maybe that's
I don't
time
know.
you're
Try a
timing out.
different one.
Looks good to me.
Yes, but
I know that guy. Yeah,
whatever.
it's
Oh, there you go. You have a scan summary, which is incomplete, I think. So, anyways, it gives you a whole bunch of information about things, and you can check it out if you want.
very cool.
Yeah, just another tool, another
Speaking of
security thing.
security, very
Yes.
security
So,
minded this week, John.
well, it was fortuitous in terms of that. OpenSSL is a set of tools that have been used by the security community for a very long time. Provides a protocol implementation, provides tooling for creating and reading certificates and generating certificates and a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm not going to bore everyone with the security can be boring at the best of times, but the 3.0 bits are now available for OpenSSL. Go
Hmm.
ahead and check them out. This is more of an FYI sort of thing as opposed to what's new. There are articles that do go into detail about what is new. Nothing super notable. I mean, OpenSSL in terms of the toolkit is pretty rock solid in my view. I've used it for a
Yeah,
number
I've
of
used it
years.
as well.
Yeah, so just 3.0 is available. Go check it out.
So I picked this one up. It's about testing, and this is talking about testing your serverless applications, and it's an
Yep.
AWS related post.
Hmm.
Um, I thought it was nice because it breaks down the. Try to scroll down a little bit. It's got a better graphic here. There we go. The testing pyramid. So it talks about how unit test, integration, and is all important, and what the difference between each of those is. And they give examples in the context of their AWS stuff on how to do this type of testing. And it's a nice breakdown of what each of these unit test or each of these test types is targeted at, and they kind of show like, this is a unit test. We're just testing this function or maybe a set of functions. Integration test is doing a little bit more work with multiple components in our system. And it gives you example of actually setting this up within AWS for a serverless product. And then it tells you how to do some end-to-end testing. And of course, at Progress, we do this with Telerik Test Studio for like web applications, but this is more like a serverless application type of a testing article. So I thought it was kind of cool to see the other side of that coin. I don't do serverless, but if I did, I'd want to know how to do unit testing. And
serverless is I would argue, a lot easier to test than, say, a web application. A web application is notoriously hard to test and feel a lot of confidence with, because there's so many components to it. Serverless are, generally speaking, I know people are going to trash me for this, but generally speaking, the baseline for testing against serverless is inputs, outputs. There are obviously case-oriented scenarios that you're going to want to test for, like high load or extraneous sort of erroneous inputs, and scenarios like availability, et cetera, that you're going to want to try and scenario test for. Those things can be difficult. Integration testing is like, very real world oriented, but the real world is when it's Friday night at midnight, you got 1 billion people hitting your endpoint. That's a real world scenario. Those things are hard to replicate. However, you can try certain things to try and see the results of what your code actually does in the serverless context when those things occur.
Yeah, and this tells you how to like do mocking and everything within AWS, which mocking is something that we do in like MVC and .NET apps as well. So there's just similar methodologies.
Mocking's good from a functional perspective, like inputs, outputs, for example. Or my endpoint isn't finished yet. I'm gonna, put this dependency in there and away I go. The where it gets really nuanced is when you have things like concurrency issues, and people highlight these things and they speak them, but you can tell they've never hit them because they don't talk about them like war veterans. I've seen these things and they really bite you in the butt at times when you least expect to be bitten. And there are ways in which you can replicate these things in a real world context, integration scenarios. And you'd be amazed at the sort of bugs that come out of your system when you're doing things under high load, low availability, security contexts are gone. Maybe the thing, I don't know, maybe the thing is taking a nap, who knows, right? So, and then how that cascades down the chain to your application or dependency in terms of its outputs, and it's that you have to really think like, okay, if this happens and then this happens, what's next, sort of thing. That's where things can, you have to have redundancy and all that sort of stuff. Like there's all kinds of things that you have to think about when testing these things out. And it's not for the cases where, it's generally speaking, it's for the cases where things don't happen the way you expect. It's like when things go wrong, things can go really wrong, because especially if you're touching data, you want to make sure you're not going to start putting in invalid entries into your database or whatnot. You're going to invalidate the state of your system. It's really important that you preserve integrity.
Yeah, you can leave yourself open to security issues. You can have orphan data, and angry users, and the whole 9 yards.
The whole Megillah.
Have somebody scrape all your data out and post it on Bitbucket. That's never happened. Ashley Madison.
Jeez.
Excuse me. So I'm not a Swift developer, but I caught this one on the wire here. I thought we'd talk about it. Swift got a massive language update. So
Swift 5.5 is available. Yep. Yep. So this was talked about earlier this year at the WWDC. Apple is innovating like mad. They've added features like async await and other. I'm just going off memory here. I can't remember all the stuff that I saw. They're bringing Swift into, more modern paradigms in terms of development. So that's great. Swift is a very nice language. I've dabbled with it a little bit. It's Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of like it's very idiomatic and very oriented, task oriented. It's certainly better than Objective C. I hate Objective C. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of positives around Swift, I think.
Yeah, there's a list from that page there, and async
Sure.
await. Some of the things you're talking about are in here.
Mhm.
I don't know what actors are, but it sounds familiar. I'm trying to think, is this let's talk about concurrency, and I think it's like the flux type pattern. They might be adding some things like that in
Every
there.
time I hear that, I think of the flux capacitor.
Streaming, global actors. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Glad to see they're innovating.
Yes, and this is obviously very important to Apple, and to Apple developers.
Speaking of innovating, Visual Studio 2022 Preview 4 just dropped, and then they shortly after that released a 4.1 because there was something broken, I believe, with like a SQL something or other.
Right.
So Preview 4 dropped. They have hot reload for C++. They fixed some hot reload stuff, I believe, with Razor.
They added a fuzzer. It looks like that's cool.
Yeah. Where did you see that?
Top line. Interesting.
Yep. So library fuzzer that they added, some game dev stuff for .NET, hot reload support for MAUI, just general improvements.
Mm-hmm.
The Razor editor, I don't know where it's lost in these notes somewhere, but the Razor editor got a big improvement. They've been overhauling that for the last couple months, or probably longer actually, but they've completely re-engineered it from the get-go. So it's rewritten code base. So it's not the same Razor engine that it was in Visual Studio 2019. So this is out now. You can grab that, and then SQL Server Explorer was the hot fix. I love that the official Visual Studio release notes use the term Explorer is hosed in VS 2022. Thank you, Microsoft.
Yes, I like borked. Borked
being
is one
realistic.
Of my favorites. Yeah, I know.
It's hosed.
Yep.
Sounds very Canadian.
Yes.
Does it not?
Yes, very hoser-like.
All right. And then finally, one more update with Sands of Maui here. My buddy Sam Basu, he's been doing this for 25 weeks now, giving us all the latest and greatest updates on .NET MAUI. So one of the big things that he mentioned in this article they had to do was that the globally available release for MAUI has been pushed off.
General availability.
General availability. Sorry. Yes. General availability has been pushed off to middle of next year. So .NET 6 comes out in November. So it's going to be Q2 sometime in 2022 when we see the GA release. So it's going to be in preview for a little bit longer, folks.
Yep. That's fine.
It's probably one of those situations, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but where they wanted to ensure that this is a quality release and not just sacrifice it for the sake of hitting a deadline.
Agreed.
So that's always acceptable. I mean, we want it to be good when it comes out, so they're waiting a little bit to make sure they got it right. .NET 6 release, however, is going to be very soon. So November is the general availability, and we are going to be seeing that probably around the time frame of .NET Conf. There's some new MAUI templates and integration with Blazor. So the .NET MAUI Blazor app template is here as a file new project dialog, which is nice.
Yes.
Then they have their own MAUI class library and MAUI app. This is like the desktop flavor. This is the desktop with the embedded web view. WebView 2 is in that one. And then you got your class library. Be interesting to see what the class library contains, because we already have one Razor class library. Now we've got MAUI class library. I haven't seen the differentiator between those two things. I'll have to look and read a little bit more on what exactly.
They really should call that the
that
MAUI
is.
opinionated library, because that's essentially what it is. I mean, if it was a class library by strictest definitions, it would be an empty project. So.
Prism MAUI. So Prism is a MVVM design pattern, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
No, Prism is that it has a long history in the .NET space of providing that pattern.
And it looks like we've got that coming to MAUI as well. We've got ASP.NET Core updates. We talk about Blazor hybrid apps. This is one of those things that is going to be a very powerful tool once MAUI is released. I have a special piece coming up in Code Magazine about this. It will ship not next month, but in November, I believe. That feature will go into Code Magazine to be able to read.
Whenever I see things like this come out, it's kind of like the equivalent of developers seeing the new Terminator for the first time. You know, when you would like the whole Terminator movie series, like, oh, I wonder what they're going to do with this Terminator. And then like the new Terminator, the bad is like totally badass. And like, you know, it has this new feature set and stuff. And so when you see these Blazor hybrid apps, it's like, oh, this is the new Terminator that everyone's going to lose their minds over, right? So it'll be fun to watch.
Yes, keep your eyes peeled for Code Magazine. If you're not a subscriber, check them out. They're doing a special edition for .NET 6. I don't know if this is public info or not, so I hope I'm not shooting myself in the foot here. I'll just tell you there's going to be good things in it, and there will be a piece from me about pretty much if you want to know everything and anything about Blazor hybrid and what it is and how it works. It's a very deep dive, long form piece that I wrote for them. So that will be coming to Code Magazine pretty soon. And I'll let you all know when to find that when it does get printed. Sometimes they do them. Code Magazine, they do theirs. Code Mag. Like I wrote this one for them last year. So they did this one in print and online. So I don't know if the one I'm doing is going to be in both again, but when I do find out, I will share that on the show. So you'll be able to read all about MAUI and how it interacts with Blazor and what all the nuances are. And
not to throw code under the bus or anything, but I cannot remember the last time I bought a physical magazine. It would have to be the years and years and years ago. But there you go.
Times have changed, but Code Magazine and there's two of them I think that are really big.
Well, MSDN was always my favorite.
MSDN has hung up their printing hat, but Code Magazine is still there, and I think it's Visual Studio Magazine is the other one.
Yeah,
those are the two big ones.
I have to say, props to MSDN Magazine. They were one of my favorite publications in terms of physical print, and back in the day I would spend, because we're in Australia, I remember spending $20 for an issue of MSDN Mag, and like you coveted this thing, like it was like on your bookshelf and it looked neat and you had them all sorted and everything. You know, it's like those ACM magazines and books you see at universities, right? So good stuff.
So Blazor, the MAUI, the project we saw up here in the file new dialog, this .NET MAUI Blazor app, that app project template is pretty much what I wrote about, and then a little bit more surrounding it to give users context. That was submitted to the editor at 20 pages.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see what changes by the time it prints. But like I said, there is a lot to learn about this technology.
Yes.
And it is a very in-depth piece. So
Well, you're walking the
looking forward
tree,
to
aren't
that.
you? Yeah, you have to walk the tree of dialogues, basically. And because every question you answer in the modals is going to dictate kind of what gets spit out at the end of it, right? I mean, those are ultimately wizards, those templates in some respects, right? You're going to give it some
Yeah.
information and it's going to generate for you some output. So you have to, in an article, go through all the possible combinations. You're basically
Oh,
breaking down the factorial as part of the article definition. So,
a lot of it is just all the different technologies involved too.
yes.
And what I try to do is not leave out anything in particular, because you've got, you don't want to just start throwing around terms. If somebody's not familiar with something, then they have to
Yes.
go look this up somewhere. So you've got XAML and Xamarin. You've got WebView 2, and you've got Blazor and Razor
Mono
and
yeah.
Mono and WebAssembly and Electron and PWAs, and like it's, the list goes on. So there was a lot of clarification as to what
Yes.
are the competing technologies, how do they work, what is this technology, how does it work, and what are the glues holding this thing together. So it's going to be an interesting one, and we'll know more by November.
We need a single page site that you can go to where it's just a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So it's just a graphic that basically does I don't know what it would look like, but it would be like, it's not an infographic where it walks you, but it would just basically represent all the technologies, right? It would be like the state of whatever. And I know that we've done the state of .NET historically in the past, but it's got to be less words, more photos, and more imagery that would explain to folks exactly what you described in a single photo or picture, rather.
Yeah,
Cool.
it would have to be one of those like Google Earth type of things where
Right.
you click, and then the more you click and drill down
Sure.
into things, you
Yeah,
have more
that's fine. But it would
infographic
give
upon
you
infographic.
I mean, there was a reason why, you see those old war footage and films and also movies where you got all the generals huddled around the layout of the land with all the armies and everything. Like the reason why they did that was because it made a lot more sense.
Mhm.
So we need like a Google Earth is a great way of describing it. We need a Google Earth for a technology map,
Yeah.
basically. And there are companies that are doing that, but it would be cool to have this for MAUI and .NET and all that.
We'll have to wait till the article comes out and dissect it a little bit, because it is really interesting, because I tried to give some insight into like all of the similar technologies too. And there's a lot of stuff out there right now that,
Yes.
I've been a web developer for 20 years, but now we've got progressive web app. And why would I want to Blazor progressive web app? So I try to answer those questions. Then there's, well, I could put it in Electron, couldn't I? Yeah, but then there's
Sure.
some trade-offs there, and I kind of go
Yeah.
into what the trade-offs are with that, and then there's there's some issues with PWAs as well, like compatibility on iOS isn't the same as what it is on Windows, and it's a very complex topic to tackle from a large perspective. So
Yes, and listen, I sympathize with folks out there who struggle with this. I totally understand. It's hard to keep track of everything that's going on. You have your job, you have your family, and now you have to spend time doing this. Give me a break, right? So it's difficult. And there's, as I like to say oftentimes, there's no silver bullet, there's just bullets, right? So you're going to find that some of these technologies look great on the surface, and then you get down into the weeds and it's like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, or it's not terrible, but it's like, I didn't realize it can't do X or Y. So, and only comes out through experience. And, we have the scar tissue to show it. So it's hard.
Yeah. And like I said, it came out to 20 pages. And while I was writing it, keep in mind, there was no documentation yet. So it was an interesting ride. So
Sure.
I hopefully the the content that I put in. I did borrow bits and pieces from other documentation, because there is Xamarin documentation, obviously, and there is Blazor documentation. So they can then borrow back some of this article as documentation for MAUI. So when people get this issue, they should be able to jump right in and figure out what MAUI is and how it fits their projects.
Yes, the name of MAUI is actually quite apt because it does represent a volcano-like surface area, which is growing and expanding and changing all the time, right? So, yeah, think of an island volcano, and the land will change and morph and suddenly be awesome one day and then terrible the next, So, yeah.
All right, John, we are going to wrap it up here. Again, appreciate you for joining me again this week. We have more Telerik release episodes coming this week. So we have our release webinars are next week. So we're doing some live streams this week talking about some of our latest and greatest bits. So I spent some time on Monday talking about what's new in web forms and ASP.NET Core and Blazor. Showed some cool demos off. There's some neat stuff actually happening in web forms again. It's like the technology that never dies, right?
It's called a cockroach technology.
It is. It just keeps coming back up.
They don't die.
There's a very cool web live preview technology that they're putting together. Microsoft's putting together. We're working with them on it. That kind of replaces the old like draggy droppy editor WYSIWYG interface. It's actually pretty neat. So I demoed that on Monday. So check our YouTube channel for that if you want to see what I'm talking about. There's some new Blazor stuff in there, and lots of new components and
shout out to the Fiddler team. I've been using Fiddler everywhere for the past 7 months over at Octopus. We've been doing a lot of work with our API. And Fiddler's been a godsend, along with Postman and all these other tools that we use. Fiddler is the bomb. I continue to enjoy using Fiddler, and Fiddler everywhere is maybe not as fully featured as its cousin Fiddler, but it is good enough, and it's got a composer and it can do replays, and it does basically everything you want from a trace proxy. So shout out to the Fiddler team.
Yeah, Fiddler is awesome. I use that all the time for working with my APIs. Especially good for troubleshooting things. As you may have mentioned there. Let's go ahead and raid. We don't have any streamers that I can tell that are on. Let me double check. Let me check my account.
Great, here we go.
So I have the Code It Live account and I have my account. They both have different followers and followees on them.
One of my favorite Twitch streams to watch are the ones where you've got the farm animals like being monitored by webcams, etc. Those are always my favorite ones.
So we usually drop into our chicken life, but I actually see a dev that I found by accident, I think. But I mean, he's got quite a bit of viewers there watching him code. He does Azure stuff. Right now it's saying he's doing some game development maybe. So we'll jump over and check that stream out. So give me 1 second to get that queued up.
This is Ed tap dancing.
And so we'll go over and rate again. I think I rated him on Friday for my show, so he probably won't recognize the show coming in here, but it's all good. So we'll queue that up, and everybody hit the follow button if you're not following us already, so you can tell when we come back online. And we will be back tomorrow. I can't remember which. I think it's the Kendo.
Another Terminator reference. We'll be back.
I'll be back. And we'll be back tomorrow with, I think it's Kendo UI tomorrow is doing their stream. So
we're gonna have to change the name of the show to Eat, Sleep, Segue.
Exactly. I like it. Let's go.